Hello. Okay, let's kick off, everybody. bit of networking being done at the front here. Why not? Okay, fantastic. So thank you everyone for joining us for this session, which is all around decarbonising industries, green hydrogen and offshore wind, a solutions collaboration. And this event has been made to really focus in on how offshore wind can work in partnership with other industries to both decarbonise those industries and also grow offshore wind. So I think it's a really important topic and one that I'm really pleased to delve into in more detail, particularly in terms of what I want to get out of this session. I want us all to leave with a better understanding of the use cases of green hydrogen and the relationship with offshore wind. And I really want to drill down into the detail of how those different sectors can use offshore wind and work in partnership to decarbonise themselves. So really excited for this conversation to begin. I want to make sure that the session is lively and interactive, so I'm sure our panelists will be absolutely fine if you want to raise your hand and ask a question. We'll start with some high-level remarks and then we'll go into the panel. So first of all, can I welcome Eric Gursky to the stage? Eric, there's a microphone there which hopefully should work. Eric is, let me just get your bio up. You introduce yourself, that works best. Thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Eric. I use this one. Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Eric Gursky. I'm heading the ocean work at the UN Global Compact. The UN Global Compact is the private sector go-to place in the UN. So we convene over 17,000 companies all over the world. We have 70 local networks and we're headquartered in New York. Our chairman is the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and our board is made up by CEOs and executives from the industry, as well as key international organizations like the ILO and so forth, WWF. Myself, I come from the shipping industry before joining the UN Global Compact. I joined in 2018 as a result of working on sustainability and climate targets in shipping, which really is a hard-to-abate sector. And I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes on that today. But really, at the Global Compact, we are doing quite a few things on oceans. It's about creating renewable energy, as we're going to talk about today. It's about greening the shipping sector. It's scaling up sustainable seafood production, but also end the waste entering the ocean and protect the oceans, of course. And finally, data sharing, collaboration, and policy planning is a key issue for us. And we try to bring the private sector into negotiations, into UN conventions, and promote international standards for business and governments. And this is extremely crucial in the wind industry, which I'll return back to. I'm going to start actually with showing you a beta website that we've been producing that I think that IT team can put up here. So this is actually the world fleet. The world deep sea shipping fleet. This moves 80-90% of all goods in the world. All our food, energy, clothes and cars goes on these ships. This is a live map. So you can, if you go into the website, greenshippingmonitor.com, it's a beta version, you can point on every ship here and get the information. These are moving everything, and by 2050, they have to go green. 70,000 deep sea ships. And if you go to the next site, sir. This is the current state of affairs on the number of green ships existing today, actually operating. You know, it's a few ferries in the Scandinavia. We also have one in Japan, a feeder, which is a good thing. It's coming to market. But, you know, these things are years in the planning. And one big obstacle is, of course, access to green energy. You know, you build a ship, it's going to last for 30 years. It's going to travel the world. Where can it fuel? In Suez, in Singapore, in Hamburg? You know, so the concept of green corridors, I'm sure some of you have heard that. It's a very important concept to at least have given ports with the same fuel technology present and in place, so that ship owners can invest and cargo owners know that they can transport their goods at zero emission. Super interesting. But this gives you a bit of an idea that when people talk about we have to go from 50 gigawatt offshore wind installed today to 2,000 gigawatt in 2050, it won't be enough. We need much more. And for us, it's all about scaling up and accelerating that scale up. We see that governments are struggling to plan well in their marine special plans for offshore wind and multi-use. So we started in February together with the government of the USA, the EU, Korea, Netherlands and Ireland, and the major offshore wind companies, a working group on scaling up and accelerating the planning phase for offshore wind for governments. So this is a three-part sprint. One is on data sharing, the second is on multi-use, and the third is nature positive, biodiversity. And these are crucial because what we see, like we saw in the oil and gas industry decades ago, is that you have different regulations and different standards in different regions of the world. It makes it really hard to scale up fast. You need alignment and you need international standards, both on the business side and on the government side. So with these governments and these industries, we're trying to have it's a 40+ member group, a forum for giving input to us so we can give that input to the international bodies and business standard committees. So we can have a standard on data sharing because we have lots of data, but it's so different and they're not always comparable. And the first sprint was just finished on data sharing, and we see that there is a real need for standardization in the private sector and the public sector. And we can scale this up if we get these things right. So happy to talk more about that after this event. But this is just to give you an idea of one industry that needs a lot of green energy, as ammonia and hydrogen. And I think 2K gigawatt won't cut it, I'm afraid. But let's do it. This is the most important thing we do here this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. I really like that real-time map of shipping lanes. I'm going to add that to my collection of live maps that I go to when I'm stressed. Fantastic to be able to see that. So the next section of this conversation is a panel. So I'm going to invite my panelists to join me up on stage here, starting with Elbia Ganoum, who's the CEO of Abeolica, the Brazilian Wind Energy Association. Welcome, Elbia. Then going to James from Mainstream Renewable Power. I'm sorry, the tech is failing me slightly this morning, but maybe we can introduce ourselves in a second. And then also introducing Jonas Moberg, who's the CEO of Green Hydrogen Organization. Please join us. And then do we also have Marty beaming in from where he is in the world right now? I think we're just waiting for our virtual panelist here. He's coming.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Marty. Where are you today?
I am in Bangkok today.
Greetings from Bangkok. What's the time there?
3 p.m.
Oh, very reasonable. Thank you. So Marty is the head of international business at Gulf Energy, and he's going to be joining us virtually. So if the panel want to spread out slightly, that might be a good idea. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let's get right down to it, and maybe if I can go to James first, actually. So just in response to what Eric shared there in terms of that map, I mean, analysts are predicting huge growth in offshore wind when it comes to the production of green hydrogen. I just wondered from your perspective as a developer, how are you seeing this growth, and what do you think is coming down the line? How do you view that picture right now?
Thanks, Rebecca. Eric, you teed that up perfectly, because in South Africa, we have the busiest shipping lanes outside of the Mediterranean. And I just quickly checked, by 2030, to decarbonize 5% of our shipping, we're going to need 13 terawatt hours or 6 gigs of renewables. That's to decarbonize just 5%. To put that in perspective, South Africa's installed 6 gigs of renewables to date over a 12-year journey. So we have to take everything we've installed to date, solar and wind power, to decarbonise 5% of our shipping traffic that comes around Southern Africa. So the challenge ahead of us is radical. I mean, we need 6 gigs a year to decarbonise South Africa's grid. So to add another 6 gigs for shipping, sustainable aviation fuel, green direct reduced iron or green steel or other projects. The petrochemical sector needs green hydrogen too. So, you know, what's exciting from a power to X point of view is the X is there. I mean, there's a lot of hope around hydrogen and it may be misplaced. I mean, we use 100 million tons a year today. I think just decarbonising that use case straight away is huge, but the new sectors that we can't decarbonise, shipping, aviation, steel, cement, is going to be huge drivers for green electrons. So taking this green electrons and moving it through the value chain to a product that we can use to decarbonise both local industries, and then South Africa's an exports-oriented economy. 20% of our exports go to Europe. So carbon border adjustment mechanism is top of mind for a lot of our big corporates. So it's really exciting.
I think, no, this one is working, thank you, great. That's a really interesting perspective there, and putting it into the South African context I think is fantastic. And just those sectors that you mentioned, so shipping, aviation, steel and cement, maybe if I can come over to you, Jonas, from the green hydrogen organisation perspective. I think your organisation has done a lot of work looking at the different sectors and the potential in those sectors. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about that, so from the offtake perspective.
Sure. Thank you very much, and this is great, and thanks to GWEC, and it's great to see our organizations working together this way. I think that we've set a target to achieve 100 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030. So that's roughly the same amount that you just spoke about that we see today that is grey. I don't actually think we'll displace that grey, because that is to a large extent locked in. You will see unfortunately a lot of that coming in. It continue. Now, what we see as the early takers, to answer your question, Rebecca, is indeed, as Eric has said, a lot of it we think will go to shipping. And if you talk about the shipping industry talks about trying to reach a critical mass of 5% of international seaborne trade to be run on low emission fuels by 2030. Now, if a significant proportion of that is green ammonia, we're talking about in the region of 40 million tons of green ammonia. So exactly to your point, the scale of everything that needs to happen is breathtaking. So we think that an early one will be shipping. We think that an early one will be fertilizers, for sure. And it's been great to see the announcements during this week. Finally, people are waking up to the fact that we have an outstanding opportunity to decouple the fossil fuel supply chain and the food supply chain. And that's why some of the announcements here this week have been so important in that space, from the Kenyans and from a number of others. So shipping will be a big one, fertilizer will be a big early one, steel making will be another early big one. You know about some of the projects in Europe, and there are a couple of other projects coming along as well around the world. So the third one will be steel making. Then, of course, some long-haul transport. I think that things like cement that you mentioned, that's further away. We don't quite know how the industrial architecture will look in that space. But these four that I've identified give us something to go with. The last thing I would say, Rebecca, is to give everyone a sense of the kind of scaling up that is required. We need to, and that comes very much to your point, not in South Africa, but globally, we need to double just about everything between now and 2030. Double the offshore wind capacity, double the solar capacity, double the engineering, just about everything along our supply chain. If you listen to Bloomberg, the number you get is roughly double every year between now and then.
Thanks so much, Jonas. My question to you is actually going to be, do you see a hierarchy of these different use cases? But I think you kind of already started to answer that question. So maybe I'll come to Elvia now. Elvia, as you know, in Brazil, the kind of offshore wind story is being laid out right now. And I know there's huge ambition to look at the green hydrogen agenda. Could you say a bit more to us about how Brazil plans to do that and the different use cases it sees for this green hydrogen economy?
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everybody. This discussion is so exciting for Brazil because, as you know, Brazil has a huge renewable potential. We have onshore wind, solar, and now we started to run with offshore wind projects. It's different, maybe the rest of the world. Brazil has a concern about how to get a market for a lot of renewable that we have. Then some years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, my main job in Avionics was how to discover more market to put your potential. Then when I started to study green hydrogen and possibilities to green hydrogen, and I thought, oh my God, every my problems is finished because we have a way to put your potential. Then how we are working now? Now we have a clear expectation when we think it's important to think in two eyes. The eyes of supply, we have, as I said, onshore, offshore, solar is a big potential. We have only with wind about 8 times that Brazil needs for electricity. It's a lot. Then no problem with supply. When you look for demand, this is important to think about. In the short term, we have a possibility to make energy transition for companies that produce commodities. Then we have a big project now and produce green commodities like steel, iron, chemical process. Then it's a very big market for us. It's a market inside in Brazil. Then when you think about to export in the middle term perspectives, we are prepared. We just launched projects to produce green ammonia and green hydrogen. In the next year, we'll have the first molecule from green hydrogen. And we have a capacity to offer this energy for vessels, for example, that I saw this is vessels. It's very important. Then the main point is about the competitiveness, because solar and wind in Brazil is really competitive. It's the most competitive source there. And we know that the key for producing green hydrogen and green ammonia is about cost, is about price. But we are very close to be in competitive price for produce green hydrogen. Then for us, perspective is very interesting. We have a middle-term view about that Brazil can be a very important leader in this transition energy process.
Thanks for that, Elvia. It was really interesting to hear how Brazil is setting out this opportunity. And maybe, Marty, if I can come to you now, because one of the key questions that I have, I think, is when we're looking at the investment case for green hydrogen, and when we're looking at these different sectors, many of them will have to themselves invest in upgraded infrastructure in order to be able to make use of green hydrogen. And you could almost get into a bit of a chicken and egg situation, I think, here from a developer perspective, waiting to see where that investment is coming from in that kind of offtake, but at the meantime wanting to invest in the generating asset itself. So maybe you could unpack that a bit more for us and say a bit more about what you think and how we can kind of solve this chicken and egg situation. That's if you can hear us.
Yes, okay, yes. So yeah, I think that the target areas would be probably Europe and South America, because they have the most offshore wind right now, and that's required for producing the green hydrogen. So it makes sense to start the ramp up over there, and then as the rest of the world catches up on offshore wind development, then we will follow in suit to have the hydrogen development. This is an issue that's also discussed a lot in Thailand. We don't have a lot of renewables yet. However, that's soon to change because there's an upcoming tender for onshore and solar in Thailand for 5,000 megawatts. We have Gulf would like to participate in also. But in Asia, we have Taiwan that has a lot of potential for the hydrogen development as their offshore wind comes online, and then Japan and South Korea coming.
Fantastic, thank you. Yes, Jonas, do you want to come in on that one?
I don't, but I wonder if you might not just moderate, but actually tell us a little bit about offshore wind. I'm very interested. No, but look.
You're expanding my role, but yes, I certainly can. Go for it. What do you want to know?
Where are we with deep sea? Where are we with the size? Which are the project, outside Denmark and outside the UK? What do you see happening? Just a little bit of flavor at the cutting edge on the deep sea offshore.
Sure, and maybe some of our, we've actually got some esteemed offshore wind developers also in the room who might want to come in on this technology point. But from my perspective, I think that the volume is now coming forward in Asia at great pace. You've heard about Brazil's really exciting plans, and we certainly think Brazil could be a really key environment to get this industrial narrative plus the offshore wind narrative together in a way that's quite simultaneous. In terms of the technology, I think the technology is there. That's what James was saying. We on the wind side, we know what we're doing. I think where we're less clear perhaps is how we work with these sectors on that investment case. That's why I was asking the previous question, because I do think there is a problem here perhaps in this chicken and egg way. We know that these hard-to-abate sectors will themselves have to invest, and particularly if we draw out the example of green steel. If you're looking at this from the offshore wind perspective, the green steel discussion is important also because we want to buy and procure green steel. So from us, kind of looking at this from a wind perspective, I think it's also how can we help other sectors get their act together so that we can then at the same time provide the power. So it has to be done simultaneously. James, I see you've picked up the mic. I know you're itching to come in here.
Going to rescue you here, Rebecca. No, it's easy. I think fundamental, and Jonas, you know this really well, is that when we make green electrons, it's a supply side discussion. We make them in bulk and we dispatch them to the grid. It's commodified, it's got the grid. When we talk power to X, green X, we don't have, they're not commodified yet, and we don't have the grid. We don't have a molecular grid. Natural gas we do, but for green molecules we don't have a grid. So exactly what you're saying is we've got to work backwards from demand and forwards from supply, and it's a really imperative conversation to interrogate from both sides how we do that and how we integrate the solution. And so understanding the off-taker and making sure that they're a key partner, that it's not just an over-the-fence agreement, it's not just a PPA, but it's a real integrated conversation. So the clients we're talking to, it's not about levelized cost of energy or levelized cost of hydrogen, it's levelized cost of X. Green steel, fertilizer or ammonia, obviously further conversations around SAF and synthetic hydrocarbons, but that's super fundamental, and these conversations don't happen overnight, and interrogating different value chains and business requirements is huge. So it's not just a siloed approach where there's a PPA for energy, there's a PPA for hydrogen, and then you're going to magically have green steel or green ammonia, or and so that integration is fundamental, and we're all learning as we go, you know.
Yeah, so let's get some collaboration going in this room, because I think there's a lot of will to problem solve here. Eric, you want to come in?
Yeah.
Philippe, I see you looking at me as well.
A short comment from shipping sector again, and we've been talking to a lot of ship owners, and of course it's crunch time now, because these ships, they last for 30 years, and they need to source. They have to make sure they actually have access to green energy. So some of these companies like CMA CGM, they sourced their own biofuel line. You know, they bought a biofuel company just to make sure they own the fuel source. And another shipping company is planning actually to deploy their own offshore wind farm, just to know that they own the fuel. Because they see, this is easy math, you won't have access, you are not guaranteed this green fuel 10, 15 years from now, because steel, agriculture, shipping, everybody wants this, aviation needs this, and it's just not enough 10, 15 years from now. So it's going to be super competitive, and that might bring a nice price parity for the producers here, as you say. It's actually coming down.
That's a really interesting point, and that kind of security of supply point I think is really interesting. Philippe, do you want to come in? And then I'll also, at this point, maybe just open it up to the floor as well.
No, I would like just to add the fact that the offshore wind industry has started with the power market and the bottom fix, where we looked at the most effective way to power load centers that were close to shallow waters. Here we have a double opportunity. First of all, we have, in addition, an off-the-grid solution where we will basically target green molecules. And the green molecules needs to be transformed into something shippable. So if we don't want to just have a pipeline between, let's say, Norway or Denmark and Germany, and keep the hydrogen as a green hydrogen, we need to be close to a source of either materials that we need to decarbonize, so green, the iron ore that we transform into DRI, or the ammonia is a shippable product. We need to transform the clean energy into something that is going to be transportable. But the great news is that if you consider offshore wind and the proximity to materials, to biomass or to carbon like refineries, you open a new geography of industrial opportunities. Because if you consider the aviation fuels, the e-fuel opportunity, you need to have carbon source.
Yeah.
You cannot just have green electrons. It's not going to power anytime soon a plane. You need to have something that you transform into e-fuels. And so it's in addition to what we have been doing until now. And the economics, I just want to make the point that the economics are not driven by the same thing. It's not a power market, it's not a grid interconnection. It's still a significant contribution starting from the physics and the efficiency of the process.
Yeah.
So to James' point, the integration of the offtake, the industrial knowledge, with a product that is green and shippable, and the proximity with materials or biomass or carbon source is creating a new geography. So it's a new business basically, and we look forward to see the real opportunities in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for that intervention, Philippe. Yes, Albia, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to put some comments about this. In discussion, we can notice that we have not only a solution. As you said, you have a lot of opportunities, and you need to think about the future, about the energy in general. We have energy solution integrate with power to X. Then this integrate, you can think about the supply and about the demand. Then we can, right now we are discussing about the green hydrogen, that the green hydrogen could be in the future replaced fossil fuel. I don't think this way. I believe that green hydrogen will be a very important energy in the future. But in the future, we'll have fossil fuel decarbonization with technology, CCS, CCUS. And in the side of demand, you have a lot of opportunity in industrial consumers and the other sectors. Then it's very important that the future is about cooperation and diversification. It is very good when you talk about supply, about security, as we have seen in European countries. Now you need to change your mind and think that we need to diversify supply and demand because we can have a safe system in the future. It's very important.
Yeah, excellent point there, Elvira. I completely agree with what you set out there. And I think this mindset shift is what we're all grappling with right now in the industry. I just want to open it up to the floor if there's any particular questions that people want to raise at this point based on what's been said. No? Okay. I would like to continue then with our panel. Yep, James, you wanted to come in off the back of that?
I think, it's just, we need to be imaginative because we are creating new industries here, and it's changing supply chains and changing geographic centers. I mean, we would import HFO into Southern Africa or in Africa. Now we can be a source of production for e-fuel. So you're flipping our energy. We now are able to beneficiate our green electron. And it's a very, and instead of sending out iron ore to Europe, can we beneficiate it into green steel? So there's really interesting opportunities here that we need to interrogate, but it's a complex value chain that we need to unpack.
Maybe then coming back to you, Jonas, we were just talking about the need there to change the supply chain. And I just want to kind of focus in on the topic of just transition here and the kind of green growth and jobs opportunities that come with this. We've heard different models so far being proposed, ones that are kind of more centralized, looking at greater collaboration, I guess, with almost the fossil fuel industry in how they're decarbonising themselves in terms of CCUS, etc. But what do you think that journey looks like in terms of the green economic growth and jobs, and how can we avoid the chicken and egg situation in this instance as well?
I think that it's very good. We're going to see off-the-scale large projects in parts of the world that we haven't seen before. And obviously we need to make sure, as you say, that it brings benefits and that we have learned from the many mistakes in the oil, gas and mining sectors. I think your point is one that is very true, and we're starting to see the importance of the fact that we're redesigning the industrial society. We're moving ports, we're moving very large-scale things. That will create a lot of opportunities. So the opportunities will come. There will be a just energy transition, but it won't come of itself. We have to work hard to make sure that it is done responsibly and well. And for that to happen, I think it is really important that we use strong standards, that we, in this incredibly fast race to financial closure, don't, as so often, give a lot of the environmental and social and community relationship aspects an afterthought, but that we integrate it from the beginning. Yeah. I think that's absolutely key. Sharon Burrell, who of the International Trade Federation, has been, the mother of the just transition notion. She has spoken, and we've had many conversations with her during these couple of days. This is what she wants to focus on, and we as the industry should grab the hand that she is extending on behalf of the global trade unions and a lot of the communities that they work with, and make sure that we work really closely together with them.
And just on the back of that, got some applause there in the room. Just on the back of that, has your organisation done any analysis to quantify what this looks like in terms of jobs opportunities? I don't expect you to necessarily know the stat off the top of your head, but it would be good to hear a bit more about.
That's a tough one. No, it's really, we should, Ines, but no, I don't think we have. it's not that difficult to do actually, because we've done some numbers. So we've done some costing of things. We can plot that out. The numbers will be big, not just during construction, but they will remain reasonable throughout. And a lot of it will be sort of midstream, downstream, for sure. But we got to be careful. We got to remember there is a lot of managing of expectations here. The revenues are not going to be what they have been in the oil, gas, and mining sector. They are going to be lower for quite a long time, and so it's as one government said the other day. We're trying to manage expectations to recognize that the fiscal benefits are not going to be significant. We therefore need to make sure that the economic benefits are greater.
Fantastic. And James, you wanted to come in on that. I know in the South African context, with all the work that's happening at the moment around the just transition, coal retirement, etc., but also the kind of labour relations piece there is particularly pertinent. Do you want to offer a reflection?
It's a perfect question for Team South Africa at the moment, because the Just Energy Transition Partnership, which was announced at Glasgow last year, the investment plan has been presented by our presidents at the start of the week, and a large amount of it, so it's $8.5 billion. Green electrons is a key focus, but green hydrogen is also a key focus. And that percolates all the way through from upstream to downstream. And green reindustrialisation is a key focus for our presidency at the moment. We've got 40% unemployment in our country. It's seen as a way to naturally beneficiate our natural resources, whether that's sunshine and wind, or whether it's iron ore, platinum group metals for electrolyzers, fuel cell production. So the whole value chain. And at the moment, green molecule sits at the center of that. So the just transition is we living it, and we're actually raising money off the back of it now.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that is particularly kind of pertinent right now in the South African energy transition. Ines, did you have a question? Yeah, come on up.
I'm just cheating because I have some figures from a report that is being launched next week, but we actually had the presentation here earlier this week from the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance. This is an alliance of 6 African sort of front runners. That is Kenya, Egypt, Namibia, Morocco, Mauritania, and South Africa. And the figures, which I do have access to here on my phone. The study looks at the green hydrogen potential in these countries based on the addressable market in terms of production potential, but also financing needs, but it also calculates some of the socio-economic benefits. And it looks like for these 6 countries, if the current, sort of at the current trajectory, we're looking at up to 400,000 jobs by 2030, 2 million jobs by 2040, and up to 4.2 million jobs by 2050. Of course, there is also expectations to be managed here about when in the project cycle you have these jobs, but some figures that...
Thank you for offering those. I think it really gives some context to our discussion, so thank you for that, Ines. Maybe I'll just get to Marty and I'll come back to Elbia. Marty, many of the Southeast Asian countries that we're talking to and collaborating with at the moment in the offshore wind space are also very keen to build an export narrative that is based on green hydrogen and green ammonia. I wondered if you wanted to offer any perspectives from the countries that you're working very strongly in at the moment about how you think that could potentially be achieved.
Sure, yeah. Everybody's racing to understand and participate in green hydrogen development. However, as I mentioned before, we need to ramp up offshore wind development first. So the countries that can do the renewables will start with the wind development. In Thailand, we don't have a lot of offshore, so we have the onshore. But when we start ramping up in Vietnam, I believe that the green hydrogen will be soon to follow. Because a lot of people really are trying to understand this, and hopefully the government will give their support so we can increase the speed of green hydrogen development.
Thank you, thank you. And over to you then, Elvia, because I know also that Brazil is doing a lot of planning around the workforce and jobs aspect of this.
Yes, the point about the economics and the social benefits, I believe it's the main point for Brazil, because since 2014, we don't have a very good performance in economy. Brazil is a country, very big country. There are a lot of people that you need to restart the industrial process. I can see in hydrogen, in green hydrogen, the opportunity to restart with this process. With only onshore wind, we have a very good result. Recently, we launched a study that the GDP increased about 20% in the regions that we have onshore winds. The investments is each $1 in investments we can give back for economy about $3.
Right.
It is a very important number. We can create job, we can invest in R&D capacity and increase the economy. It's really important to see.
That's a really powerful statistic, and I'm going to steal that one for future presentations, because having an example of where this benefit can be quantified is really good, so I'm stealing that one for future. I just wanted to go out again to the audience, because I'm keen that we have this collaborative discussion. So are there any questions that anyone wants to ask, or any points that they want to offer in this conversation? Go on, Stuart. I know that this is this is your background. Go on. Okay, okay. Okay, maybe I'll pick on other people. Yes, please.
So hi, this is Nakul from Climate Action Network South Asia. I'm not sure whether how relevant what I am asking would be, but then, I would be keen to understand, taking examples from Southeast Asia and the Vietnam examples, what are the challenges and key cost economic benefit analysis we could use to pursue more investments into offshore wind, and then at some point of time in the next 5 years or 10 years that can be linked up to the green hydrogen mission, which India is very ambitiously taking forward for the energy transition. So we are keen to hear your experience and thoughts on that. Thanks.
Great. So India, a country with huge with really large offshore wind plans, and actually a strong desire to run a tender for offshore wind later this year, I believe, but also has great big green hydrogen plans. And the question is, what's the experience in other countries, and is there kind of a cost-benefit analysis of this whole model that has been done? So I wonder if any of the panel wanted to come in on this point. Yeah, Jonas first, then maybe James.
I think it's important to recognize that we are not growing an industry. We're going from zero to massive in a very short space of time. And that means that the way you look at it has to be quite a different one. What some of the companies that we're working with essentially are doing is saying, all right, we have to assume that the offtake will be there, because they look at the curves, they look at the enormity of the challenge, and then just how to get there, keep your costs as low as possible, and just an absolute focus at cost. And that's what, of course, what we have seen has been such an extraordinary experience in the solar space. And it's now playing out the wind, and now we need to do the same in starting to connect these things with the green hydrogen economy. So I think my answer to you is one has to look at it in a slightly different way to get to it, by keeping the focus at cost. And of course, in India, that is exactly what a number of the actors are doing. And what I think is really interesting also in India is that the government has recognized that it's not by stimulating the production that is going to take things there, it's by facilitating, it's stimulating the demand. So it's setting the demand targets, how much of the fertilizer production should be green, and so on and so forth. And that is, of course, some of the demand signals from the Indian government that are key.
Yeah, and some really good examples there, I think, of how governments can look at this from a policy perspective and look at marrying the demand side policy with the supply side policy. Martha, did you want to?
Yeah, hi, I had a question and I just realized that Ines has left, but maybe one of my panelists can help. So really, really interesting discussion, and I'm particularly interested when it comes to the just transition about ensuring that the skills are there when infrastructure such as green hydrogen is built. So I was wondering in this respect whether there's been any skill mapping exercises, potentially also in the framework of the Just Transition Partnership, which is actually looking what skills are needed to create, build, be part of this new economy. Are they there? And if they're not there, how can we ensure that they are there in the appropriate time so that that local workforce can actually participate and that we don't have to then outsource other workforces to be part of that economy?
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh, no need for me. I'll go home. No, go for it. You can go.
So your name? Martha. A great question, Martha. So just some context, at the end of November, the South African president is hosting a green hydrogen summit. Two of those, one of the days specifically dedicated to going to 2 tertiary education institutions with a high-level delegation. So global and local stakeholders are going to the University of Western Cape and the University of Cape Town, specific to look at the engineering campuses to make sure that we start from ground level. Dealing with molecules is complicated, dealing with electrons is complicated, and making sure that we have onshore skill sets is fundamental to participating in this. But also to reach that scale. I mean, what Jonas and everyone's talking about, it's not, the speed is breathtaking. So we need the skill sets, and we need to incubate it from bottom up and from top down.
Maybe over to Elbia. Elbia, I don't know if this skills mapping has been done in Brazil around the hydrogen economy, or is that something that still needs to be done?
Yeah, it has been a very important point in our discussion, because we did this map for onshore some years ago, and now we are prepared this map for offshore and the green hydrogen together. It's very interesting, because as we used to say that you can create jobs, but what kind of jobs? Yeah. Yes, there are other interesting point that I was seeing and remember this is about diversity and inclusion, gender. Then how can we make this diversity and inclusion? Then we are studying right now this and try to input this process and start the very strong industry with capacity, with skills, including diversity and gender. Then it's a job that we are doing now.
I do know there is some experience from the UK model with the Offshore Wind Industry Council of doing that kind of skills mapping. And what they found is that, yes, we need more people, more skills pretty much everywhere. And we're going to run out of skilled workers quite soon. So for any countries who are listening or in the audience, I think that is a key focus from the very beginning. How can you make sure that you have a skilled workforce ready for this growth? I don't know if there are a couple of questions, people trying to catch my eye in the audience, and maybe this lady first, and then Ava.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting discussion. My name is Fumio Harada from Development Bank of Japan, and I'd like to ask a question regarding the value of hydrogen as a storage. And many governments come up with some, subsidy or support to just looking at the value of hydrogen as a fuel. So usually the subsidy is to mitigate the gap of the current price of the existing fuel such as gas. But the hydrogen definitely have a value of as a storage, just like long-term battery or something. So, but it is not usually articulated or to give them some absolute number. Or how can we just make sure that the value of hydrogen as a storage is, realized or to be shared?
Yeah, great question, because I think so far our panel has focused in on the kind of use case and of hydrogen, but I think we've not yet mentioned storage as one of those use cases almost. So Jonas, did you want to come in on that point?
No, I think it's a good point, and I think it's one that regulators and our authorities need to think very hard about fast. In the case of Japan, I think we're more likely to see a significant ramp up of the import of green hydrogen, green ammonia. We'll see green ammonia blending in the power sector. Whether that's a good thing or not, that's a separate issue, but we're likely to see it. And I think so we have to recognize that we're going to see significant green ammonia imports. Based on that, I think you then need to start to ask your question: how do you ensure the supplies and the storage that you need? And then we need to work very closely, very quickly with our regulators to make sure that we get a pricing structure that addresses your point.
Does any of the panel want to come in on that point?
Are you asking for us to price in a premium for the fact that we're storing hydrogen as a long duration energy storage? I think that's a fantastic question. I don't think we're accurately looking at that. I mean, in South Africa, we've modeled the opportunity cost of not having power when we have what we call load shedding or blackouts, and it's like 8 rand a kilowatt hour. Now, that doesn't mean anything to most of the audience, but the price of a kilowatt hour from municipal power is 2 rand a kilowatt hour. So you're looking at 4 times the price of power. So the opportunity cost of not having power is 4 times. So if we start pricing stored hydrogen, which is essentially a stored form of energy, at 4 times the cost of making it, I mean, then you've suddenly got a business case, right? Because physically storing hydrogen is really difficult. I know Jonas is referencing ammonia, much easier carrier, but storing ammonia is not easy either. So at the moment, we don't have the answer from a techno-economic point of view to make the business case work for storing hydrogen, but maybe we need more innovative ways of looking at that business case.
That's a really good framing, actually, and I certainly think this opportunity cost framing is kind of setting a lot of thoughts whirring in my own head about how we can advance that. Avra, did you have a question? Oh, I'll go to you first.
Thanks very much. Avra Mudli from Mainstream. I was wondering, having listened to the panelists, and in particular Eunice, you said we're starting from zero. How do we get governments on board? Industry is usually way ahead and usually knows much more than governments do. How do you get buy-in? How do you get them involved, in particular from a regulatory point of view, from a policy point of view? Do you have any experience or any recommendations on how to do this? Thanks.
Marty, maybe in the first instance, did you want to come in on this question? We'll go to Marty first.
So I think that we need to take a look at the government as a potential partner. If we involve them in such a way that we're kind of educating them, hand-holding them, they understand the process of development and where the end goal is, and they will want to ask for our feedback into how to write the regulations or even how to adjust the regulations, because I think most governments don't understand this whole renewable energy sector totally yet. So, if they still don't understand it, then they might be posing more barriers. So I think the key is to involve your local government and help them.
Thanks for that. And Jonas, did you want to come in?
Yeah, well, I mean, Martin have said it. He's absolutely right. And your question is, of course, a fundamental one. It is totally critically important. And, I worked in government for many years. I worked in the UN system. It is a really tough one. And we just need to shout more loudly wherever we can. It's a tragedy that climate is demanding this transition. Business is now moving, but governments and civil society are behind the curve. Multilateral development banks are behind the curve. So the enablers, The ones that are supposed to make it happen and happen responsibly, they are the ones that are dragging their feet. And this is happening so quickly. So we need to take every opportunity to do exactly the kinds of things that Martin is setting out. I don't think there is a panacea for how you do it. I think you need to shout, I think we need to write, I think we need to campaign, we need to have conversations, we need to have a planning for climate commission, which GWEC and we are launching. We need all sorts of these things to push, push, push.
As my colleague says, a great question. I think for the context of people in the room, you know, organizations like GIZ are coming into, in South Africa, are capacitating local, national and provincial governments to walk through the journey of what's a green electron, what's a green molecule, what's the opportunity, what's the job implication, you know, the value chain. And we've seen the value of that training and just spending time communicating and educating on the ground with these different aspects of governments, because we can say they're behind the curve and we can beat our chest and get frustrated, but if we don't capacitate and take the time and often we just get frustrated that people aren't with us and we're in our own echo chambers. So we have to do that hard, slow work of capacitating. It's not sexy, but it's really important.
Yes, very good question. Thank you. So I can see in Brazil, for example, we discuss all the time about the big potential opportunity, but I see that our policymaker is a little bit behind about this discussion. Then they cannot understand very well what do we mean, and they will have a big job in order to convince them. Mainly because there we have a very big potential for renewable, we have electricity. They cannot notice that it can be a very big tool for restart economy or industrial recovery. Then we are doing this job right now, and in order to convince them, it's not about electricity, it's not about megawatt hour, it's about industrial processes, it's about to increase economy, it's about society. Then we have a little bit fight with them. Then I believe that you will get, but this is a little bit difficult.
Thank you, Albia. So we're out of time now, but I just want to give the panelists one final chance to make one key point. So if you're in the elevator at your hotel with a politician, just so happens, and you want to give them a recommendation about what they can do to kickstart this economy, what would you say to them? Start with Albia, and then we'll see how we pass the microphones.
Yeah, I believe the key factor is a structural policy view. We need to prepare this and give this for the policymakers.
Thank you.
I think policy consistency is fundamental, but I would focus on power to X and not hydrogen. I'm worried that we get lost in this discussion of hydrogen's a vector, but if we talk about a tactile product that is the result of beneficiating these green electrons, then people can wrap their heads around that value chain. Otherwise they get lost. So if we talk about how we can make a green product, it could be a green apple using green fertilizer, and South Africa and Africa exports a lot of produce, you know. So if we can make the output tactile and have that demand focus, I think we can work backwards and solve the value chain.
Thank you. Maybe I'll go to Marty, then Jonas.
Well, I would just ask them, where are you at in the understanding of renewable energy and hydrogen? And we are developers, we are the experts, and we'd be happy to help and advance the industry.
Thank you. And Jonas?
The opportunities are vast. We are redesigning the industrial society. We have to act urgently.
Great. Nice, concise points there from everyone. So I just want to give our panel a round of applause. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today. Really good discussion, and let's continue the collaboration outside or in the room now. Thank you.